Oh, now it tells you. Got it. All right. I'm Michelle Rehill. I am the chairperson of the Northborough Library Board of Trustees. I'll call this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. I will now read the advisory regarding remote meetings. This open meeting of the Library Board of Trustees is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on July 16, 2022. All members of the Library Board of Trustees are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows Library Board of Trustees to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. I will now do roll call attendance. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brittany Burns.
Brittany Burns, present.
Mitch Cohen.
Mitch Cohen here.
Mary Crowley is not present. Pat Fonts.
Pat Fonts here.
Jim Hogan.
Jim Hogan here.
Jocelyn McElhenney. Oh, I can't hear you. Jocelyn? Oh.
Hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Jocelyn McElhenney here.
Okay. Oh, good. Beth Samus.
Beth Samus here.
Richard Tucker.
Richard Tucker here.
Michelle Rehill, I'm here. We also have with us Library Director Jennifer Bruno. All right, with that out of the way, we can move on to, I have no opening remarks today. Make it official. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 10th meeting?
I'll make such a motion.
All right.
I'll second.
Was that Mitch second? All right.
It was.
There are no questions or comments about it. We will move on to the roll call vote to approve. All those in favor of Brittany Burns?
Brittany Burns, aye.
Mitch Cohen?
Mitch Cohen, aye.
Oops, to do this. Pat Fonts?
Pat Fonts, aye.
Jim Hogan?
Jim Hogan, aye.
Jocelyn McElhenney?
Jocelyn McElhenney, aye.
Beth Samus?
Beth Samus, aye.
Thank you. Richard Tucker?
Richard Tucker, aye.
And I, Michelle Rehill, also vote in favor. Motion carries unanimously to approve the minutes of the January 10th meeting. All righty. Moving on to the FY23 appropriations report. Are there any questions or comments about expenditures to date?
Actually, I have one. Just quick question concerning the expenditures for books. Which I don't have the figure in front of me right this second, but Jen, it seemed like what 35% expenditure or something to that effect up to this date.
Oh, the non-print media is probably the one.
Non-print. Yep.
Books and periodicals we're at 60%, and then the non-print media is 25%. A lot of that spending goes into overdrive closer towards, so like between now and May, you'll start to see that number get closer to where it should be.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments about that? If not, we will move on to the library director's report, which predominantly is the new business section of the agenda.
I figured since I had a lot of new business requests that I would kind of leave it to that. Everything else is just sort of chugging along. Yeah, we're just sort of business as usual with a lot of things and working on some projects, but there weren't a lot of huge updates other than just these three things. So that's what I decided to focus on, which I can wait
Okay,
until we get down to new business.
all right, we'll go to new business.
All
Beginning
right.
with the proposed library staff training dates.
Yes. First, did anybody have any questions about why we would like to do some staff development days? I don't want to reread what I typed, but we did try to look and try to make a Monday morning work, and without making somebody come in at 9 and stay until 8:30 at night. And it wouldn't just be one person, it was 6. And that just seems like too many. So I would like to request permission to close early on those 3 dates so that we can bring in June from Family and Youth Services to talk about interface and how the library can help with that service that the town pays for. We'd like to bring in a training on it's a situational awareness, just sort of being able to recognize different issues that are occurring with patrons, whether it's substance use or mental illness, or even just the more unsettling behaviors. We've had some kind of scary things that have happened in the past. Some staff are really good at kind of noting who's in the building and what they're doing and picking up on like, hey, this might be an issue, and others are not so much. So that's something that they've been requesting. We have probably more ideas than we could actually get to this year. Privacy is another big one. So that's sort of the basis for it. I would not advocate closing the library if I didn't think that it was of greater importance to the town. So with that being said, I'd turn it over to you for any questions or comments.
Personally, I'm always in favor of staff development, and the topics that you've discussed are, I think, very important. The situational awareness is something that in a public library, in any public space, is a good skill to have. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
Are you broadcasting out to the whole world what dates,
Yes.
the dates that you'll be closed?
Yes. If they were approved, we would put them on our closed dates on the website, and then they would go a couple of weeks before. They would go onto the banner at the top of the website, so everybody who goes there will automatically see. If you go on there now, it's President's Day, so it just gives people a little bit of a warning that we're closing early. We would probably put some signs up because this is less intuitive than a holiday where people would expect us not to be open. So just to get the word out a little bit, and then why also, I think it's important for people to understand that we're closing for a specific greater good, so to speak.
Not just so you can have coffee and donuts together.
Right. And play, what is it, Loud Librarians or whatever that new game is.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I think it's a really great idea what you guys are doing, and a good opportunity for staff. And I wonder if it goes well, even perhaps making this a regular part of your annual calendar.
Yeah, I think that would be the hope, is that it's really effective and people love it, and it leads to great things, and we can do it every year.
That makes sense. That's a great thing. We talk about this all the time, but we've never said, oh, we should put this as part of the annual calendar. Thank you, Brittany.
It was one of my evaluation goals.
Okay.
Finally making it happen.
Hooray. All right. Does anybody else have anything to contribute, ask? Does this require a motion if we're closing the library, or is it just we need to say okay?
I think
I
there should be
think-
a vote.
I think it should be a vote.
All
You
right,
vote
would
on the
someone-
holidays, so.
Okay. Would someone,
If you're looking for a motion, I'll make a motion that that we approve the staff development schedule as proposed.
Seconded.
all right, is that Beth seconded? All right, so the motion on the floor is to close the library for 3 late afternoons for training, staff training. All those in favor of the motion, Brittany Burns,
Brittany Burns, aye.
Mitch Cohen,
Mitch Cohen, aye.
Pat Fonts,
Pat Fonts, aye.
Jim Hogan,
Jim Hogan, aye.
Jocelyn McKelney,
Jocelyn McKellany, I.
Beth Samus,
Beth Samus, I.
Richard Tucker,
Richard Tucker, aye.
Michelle Rehel also says aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Oh, okay. The grant discussion. We all got that a while ago, right? Last call.
So, just to give you a little bit of a recap, even though I cannot formally publicly announce the source of the grant, the library was awarded a grant in the amount of just over $66,000. And it is a COVID pandemic recovery grant. I can broadly say that. And it is unrestricted, which means that we have pretty full control over how we want to spend it. So my proposals in my report were to work on the lobby redesign, which we had been talking about a year ago. It stalled out, but I was finally able to get in touch with somebody, a new designer, to help me move that project forward and get it off the back burner. We had been talking about some upgrades to the meeting room and the conference room. And then I put number 3 as carpet replacement in parts of the library. That one, I really don't know what it will cost or if it's even going to be feasible to do it in portions. I'm hoping to get some kind of quote and guidance. So I've reached out to Sean, and we're kind of working on it to see what's feasible for that. But there are definitely some places in the library where the carpet is quite noticeably deteriorating. So that would be my sort of third priority, depending on what the cost is of the first 2 projects, which I should know in the next couple of months. But before I went too far into pursuing quotes for things and convening the building and grounds committee and moving forward with any of this, I wanted to get your thoughts, because it is sort of unusual that we would come into this kind of money. I did not want to just sort of take it upon myself to decide that the money was going to be spent in any specific way. So if you have thoughts or if there are other priorities or projects, we really don't have, there's no limitation. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
And we will reconsider this upon you receiving quotes. Is that the idea? Okay.
Yes.
Jen, does the money have to be spent this fiscal year?
I think so. Let me see if I
Okay.
have that. I believe that is the intent for the money.
All right. So I guess it would make sense to, if not go with your project proposals in order, go with the ones that we know we can get done in that time frame.
I mean, if I have a year and a priority, I can make just about anything happen within that budget. Yeah, it looks like I do have to spend it within the year.
I think if you just stay in touch with the Building and Grounds Committee, I think that's,
Mhm.
should be an easy way to, proceed. This is a wonderful gift and, but I think we'll easily do something wonderful with it. So,
Yeah, and my thinking was we have the Friends for programming. They've given us a healthy budget for those events. We're really kind of at our limit for, I mean, we could do one big thing, but we've already committed to a couple of big things this year that we have funding for already, and I'm not sure I could spend 66,000 on events. Well, I'm sure I could. I don't know that that would be the best.
The awesome events, but they might not necessarily be library related.
Exactly.
I,
You know, and when we do have a good collection budget from the town as well, so it seems like the needs, and just sort of in keeping of the spirit of the grant itself, you know, the library redesign came out of changed habits post-pandemic. The meeting room upgrades reflect a change in the way that people are meeting. You know, if we're able to get any kind of hybrid meeting software that the public can use, that's easy enough for people to learn how to use, I think that would be a huge benefit to the town. So that's, if everybody's happy with those priorities, then I can go ahead and proceed with convening the Building and Grounds Committee and getting some quotes for some of these projects.
okay, I don't want to be a bummer or anything, but if I'm reading this correctly, it says something about a termination date of June 30th, 2023, not 24.
In the contract,
Mm-hmm.
the dates are wrong.
If you look at the
Yeah,
back of the contract, and
yeah, I'm
But
looking
I-
at that.
I
That
was
can't
squint-
possibly be right.
I was
Otherwise-
squinting at the tiny print and then flipped it over and said, oh, there it is. So not my imagination.
Contract performance shall terminate as of June 30th. Okay, well, I will be checking on that date.
Thank you.
And if I have to spend $66,000 before June 30th, then you're gonna see me working my tail off.
Carpeting
This
and
is what I
sharp-
want to spend the money on, so I will just,
Carpeting's looking better.
the carpet is looking better, except that has to be bid. Because it would cost over, is it 25,000? So I'm
True.
hoping these other projects don't have to be put to bid because they should be lower level. But if I have to spend all this money in 4 months, I'm gonna have bags under my eyes, but I'm gonna do it.
you can do it.
Oh, I can do it.
Yeah.
We're getting a new circ desk.
Jen, can any of it be put towards like the HVAC or projects already completed, or is it new projects?
I was focused on new projects, but I will take a closer look at the contract.
Just if you have to spend it fast.
Yes, exactly, because then, you know, we would free up other money that doesn't have to be spent quite that quickly. So yeah, I will take a look at that. All right, well, you know what I'm doing tomorrow morning.
Okay. All right. And anything else about the grant discussion? Now that I've thrown my bucket of cold water on it.
I mean, if you'd like to get a Building and Grounds Committee meeting gathered, let me know.
Yep, as soon as you would like to convene, based on everybody's schedules, I have been talking to the same company that did the chairs upstairs in the meeting room about some lobby furniture, and she sent me a stack of samples for fabrics, and a sample layout. I just got that probably an hour ago from her, because I figured that was a no-brainer project. That had been our priority in the first place. So, So yeah, whenever you're ready to meet, we have some fun things
Okay.
actually to talk about.
Excellent. Good. Looking forward to it.
All righty. Shall we move on to the budget overview?
Why don't we define my correct?
Do you want to, I know you want to talk about some specific line items. I think you said you wanted to highlight.
Yep, let me do a little bit more talking than I normally would do today. Sorry, I have about
You can talk all you
50,000
want.
different attachments open right now, and I'm trying to find the one that I want. All right, so I don't want to go line by line into every single expense that we incur, but I did want to give you kind of a guided tour, if you will, of our different line items, because some of them are pretty straightforward, and then some of them are maybe not quite so intuitive. So our sorry, just bear with me.
Do we have some of that
Yeah.
old music?
The Jeopardy theme song is in my head right now. So one of the bigger changes for this year is that the facilities manager is going to be consolidating a lot of the line items across departments. So you'll see a zeroed out fuel budget, a zeroed out HVAC maintenance budget, and building maintenance, which is amazing. Sean is essentially taking care of these now, but what he's doing is, he's managing all these different buildings and all these different budgets. They're just consolidating them into one thing so that it's a little bit easier for him and doesn't require my signature for things. So it's just making the process a little bit faster, and it's freeing me up, honestly, to do things that that are not involving an HVAC system. It's not my area of expertise, nor is the electrical and things like that. So he also has a better pulse on the utilities spending trends and things like that. So he's been doing that part of the budget for us. So it just makes sense to send it over to him to have it centralized and sort of off my plate. So when you look at those and all of a sudden they're zeroed out, that's sort of the thinking behind that. We do have a utilities budget still listed in
Right.
here. Let's see. So
Quick question on that, Jen. And I
mhm.
apologize if my Wi-Fi is flaky. Everyone's very choppy, so hopefully you can hear me. So in terms of zeroing out those line items, one question, does our bottom line drop by those as well? My assumption is probably yes, but I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, so depending on how you look at it, our budget is either down a tiny little fraction of a percent or up 4.5%. And it just
Right.
within the facilities budget is still a line item that will say library
Mhm.
maintenance. It's just no longer
Yep.
listed. So I would still, in terms of state reporting, I would still report those numbers to the Mass Board of Library Commissioners.
Okay.
And they still kind of factor
Yep.
into our appropriations requirements. So that's not impacted. It's just sort of a bookkeeping switch.
And which is what I'd expect. So that's fine. And then related, if it's going into the building department budget, does that mean that Sean is absorbing the risk of variability of fuel costs as opposed to us?
Yes. Yes. That is the case. So he would be able to monitor,
Okay.
that
Good.
spending and be a little bit more on top of it than the way it is now.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good change for us because electricity costs go up, and then all of a sudden it can impact our core mission very quickly.
Right.
So I approve of being relieved of that burden.
So do I. The next line item is equipment maintenance, which is a little bit different. We have equipment maintenance and then facilities maintenance. So Sean is taking the facilities maintenance off our hands. The equipment maintenance is our computers and our copiers and things like that. So in the detailed budget explanation, there is a list of things that we have contracts for, or software annual licenses and things like that. So those are all listed there. And that is just for the maintenance of the equipment. We do have a separate line for purchasing of technology, which is a little bit later. Contractual services, slightly different. Again, we do have some contracts in the equipment maintenance, and then everything else. So CW Mars, our network membership is in there, our web hosting, our self-checkout, and a small Verizon budget, and that is for the phone for the elevator that we did not know existed until it was disconnected. And there was no emergency phone call ability in the elevator. So thankfully it didn't get stuck. It wasn't very long before we figured that out. But oops, that was an oops. So there's a small contract in there to maintain that very important phone. And just as a little point of fact, the contract for CW Mars, the amount that's appropriated is only half of the actual cost of that membership. The other half is funded through our annual state aid. So the actual cost of membership in the network is somewhere just under $34,000 a year, and about 16.5 of that comes out of the town budget. The next one is office supplies. That covers, our little pens and pencils and notebooks and things like that. But the biggest expense for that is our postage meter and our copier license. So that covers like the toner and the cost of the paper and things like that. Repairs and maintenance is getting moved. There's a small budget for custodial supplies. That's tissues and paper towels and things like that. Our books and non-print media budget, they're broken out in very broad ways, but if you consider the numbers together as one, that is what we're using to meet that 15% requirement from the state to maintain our certification for the library, which is really important. We don't want to risk being decertified. You lose a lot of privileges and the ability of our patrons to use other libraries and interlibrary loan and things like that. So so that is it's a standard 15%. It's a pretty healthy amount of money. It does what we need it to do. It gives us enough to kind of keep the collection looking nice. We have enough for, buying replacements when we need to, and all the different databases that we purchase and all the different types of book formats that exist now, which is so many. And we have library supplies, which are different than office supplies, just because for reporting purposes, this is what we use to actually get materials physically ready to go out on the shelves. So book tape, labels, packaging, Mylar covers, and things like that. The next three, travel, mileage, dues, and meetings, really all pertain to professional development. They're just broken out in kind of a more granular way, but that's our memberships in ALA or the New England Library Association, travel to those local conferences. We have increased that so that more of our staff can actually participate, instead of just me going to one and then we miss everything else. So I can start sending my librarians to the Mass Library Association conference or NELA. Probably not enough to send us to ALA. It's in Chicago, but we don't necessarily need to go that far. And new technology and equipment, that's our servers, our computers, any printers that are not on that printer lease, things like that. Do you have any questions about the presented budget?
Anyone?
I don't know how you want to handle the supplemental request discussion. I think Michelle and I probably need to get together and talk about strategy. I did submit a supplemental request, which goes alongside the budget. That was to increase the hours for the library associate who is in the reference department from 19 hours to 40 hours. That would make the adult services department staffing levels mirror that of the children's department. So there's 2 full-time staff members in that department and 1 19-hour a week. Upstairs, we have just 1 full-time adult services librarian and 2 part-time. There's a librarian and an assistant. So what I wanted to do was take that library assistant, turn them into a full-time person so that we can do more. And if you're curious as to what that more is, it's in that supplemental request. It's about 1.5 pages of justification. Didn't make it into the budget for the appropriations committee. So part of what I would like to do is look at revisit the conversation about Thursday hours. I know that happened pre-pandemic. I've started to kind of look at whether Thursday evening hours make more sense, or if they still make sense, or if Monday morning hours actually make more sense. Some of the data that I've pulled so far suggests that mornings are way busier than the evenings, but there's more than just foot traffic that goes into that decision. So Michelle, I don't know if you want to have, I don't know if that conversation fits into a subcommittee or if it's something that you and I should just discuss offline, or how you want to. I'm going to kick that over to you now.
Gee, thanks.
Take it.
All right, I'll run with it. I think I'd rather, if it's okay with you, have the 2 of us have a conversation so that we can go back and talk about this is where we were, this is what happened, and what the options are on the table, and then decide, maybe bring it back. We either, I don't know if that would go to the administrative committee or long-range planning. Personnel. Administrative has personnel issues. If you want to run it by them,
Okay.
by the administrative committee, after you and I have just to catch up on where we were, kind
Sure.
of go back to work, move it forward.
Okay. Yep. And Jocelyn, are you the administrative committee chair? Okay. Just making sure. And I will pull all of this together. And while I'm thinking of it, Richard, were you the one that asked a while back about staffing levels before they were? I finally found that information. So for the next meeting packet, I will have that. I found it in a folder today. So I hadn't forgotten the question. I just wasn't able to answer it until today. But I will put together, after Michelle and I talk, I'll put together something a little more comprehensive and get the administrative committee's thoughts and put that on the agenda next month for a recap.
Okay, I hope Beth's dog is not around. This could be bad.
This is where my cat likes to sit.
I swear my dog never wants to be in my lap ever, except tonight, apparently.
Well, that way we had 2 guests in our meeting, so that balances it out. Some good representation from the pet world.
Actually, my feline companion had made her walk through, check out what was going on, so you missed him.
Oh, I missed it.
Brittany's had a brief appearance too, I think.
I feel like I saw a tail in Brittany's screen.
Yeah, critter, yeah.
Yes, The cat has desperately been trying to join the meeting.
I thought I saw something, and I don't know if it was Brittany or Pat's, but all right. I don't have any pets. Can I just like pretend and?
You can borrow this one.
No,
I think that-
sorry, I'm allergic.
Well, don't borrow her then.
Okay.
I don't want to make you miserable.
All right, so we sort of have our we've done the new business staff training, the grant discussion, budget overview. From the grant, oh, we're gonna be so busy. There will be a building and grounds meeting soon.
Mhm.
And then as far as the budget is concerned, we will need the administrative committee. I'll meet with Jen,
Mhm.
get caught up, and then administrative can meet to talk about this as a personnel issue. And then probably, hopefully for the next meeting, we can decide what we want to do.
Sounds good.
All righty. Then I think that's it.
Thank you, everyone.
Is there any other new business that should come before the board at this time?
The only thing that I noticed today that I don't think there's an action now, but the historical marker for the library,
Oh, yeah.
I believe they decided they were moving that project forward, so it's a good time to start thinking about how we want the wording on the marker to read. And again, I don't believe they were looking for any specific decision right now. I don't know, again, if that fits in somebody else's subcommittee or if you want me to work with somebody individually to try to come up with something and propose it for the next meeting. How do we want to handle that?
Maybe that could go on to the building and grounds committee.
Perfect.
Sure.
Since we're meeting anyway.
Yeah, it's meeting anyway. So I'll go back and reread those, the memo, the email about that.
Yep.
I know I read it
So did I.
on.
I read it and then so many of these other things happened. And it just hadn't, because there was no action and no deadline. It's been a while, or it's been about a week since I've looked through it, so take a look at that.
All right. Making a note. Okie. Anything else that anyone has? Because if not, I will say that the date of the next meeting is March 14th, 2023, 7 p.m. Still sticking with the remote schedule, the remote meetings. And at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
At once.
Thank you, Pat. Pat moves that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jocelyn. All right, by roll call, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting at 7:41 p.m. Brittany Burns,
Brittany Burns, aye.
Mitch Cohen,
Mitch Cohen, aye.
and Pat Fonts.
At once, aye.
All right, Jim Hogan,
Jim Hogan, aye.
Jocelyn McElhenney, that's twice. Oh,
McElhenney, aye.
thank you, Beth Thomas,
Beth Thomas, aye.
Richard Tucker,
Richard Tucker, aye.
and Michelle Rehill also says aye. Meeting is adjourned at 7:41 p.m. Thank you all